Hello, I'm Pat Cooper. I sponsor a child and an elderly lady through CFCA. CFCA is Christian Foundation for Children and Aging. It's an organization in Kansas City started by 5 family members who wanted to help people who were in foreign countries that were poor. I sponsor a child in the Philippines, Wilbur. He was 9 when we sponsored him. And my mother had sponsored Maria from Medellin, Colombia. And when my mother died, I assumed her sponsorship.
Pat, tell me, how did you find out about this program?
About 10 years ago, a retired priest came to our church, St. Charles Borromeo, Livermore, and spoke on CFCA, told us about the program. It's a sponsorship program. At that time, you chose a child or an elderly person from a number, I think that's 11 different countries, and you would sponsor them, and they gave you a profile and a picture, and then you'd send letters back and forth. So that's how I got started. And then I encouraged my mother to adopt an elderly person, and she did. And then later I sponsored that lady when my mother died.
Pat, do you have any idea how many parishioners at St. Charles participate in this program?
I don't know exactly, but I will tell you that about 2 years ago, another retired priest from CFCA was coming to our parish to recruit sponsors, and they emailed, CFCA emailed several of the current sponsors asking them to help with the reception, which we did. And at that time, we had either 25 or 30 folders, and all of them were taken. And then, so I imagine there's a minimum of 60, and not everybody has just one sponsor. Some have as many as 4.
So tell us, is this a Catholic-sponsored organization?
It's really interdenominational or not sponsored. It just happened that the family, 2 brothers, a sister, and another relatives that started this 30 years ago happened to be Catholics, and I believe 2 of the men in that family who were in the priesthood later left, and they had been working in South America, and they're the ones that started. But they religion of the sponsored elderly and children isn't in the picture. I mean, they have families in India, all over the world, about 11 countries, and so the denomination doesn't make any difference.
So, Pat, the children and adults that are sponsored, I'm assuming then they don't have to be members of a Christian denomination?
No, because they have Muslims and Philippines, Hindus, yeah.
How much does it cost to sponsor?
10 years ago, it was $25 a month, and recently it went up to at first to 30 and then 33. But if you didn't have the money to pay the increase, you didn't have to. But that's what it's costing to sponsor a child, and they get a lot for their money.
What does that monthly sponsorship stipend actually provide?
It provides for uniforms, transportation, tuition if needed for schools. Usually they get a package of food each month. At Christmas and at their birthday, they have a community party, and each child or elderly gets a gift. It also helps with other programs that they're working on, like livelihood projects, teaching people to do small things like making placemats, doormats, anything that can help them to earn a little extra money. It provides for some health care, dental. They get an annual physical. It's amazing what they can do with this money.
Pat, I understand that you sponsor 2 individuals. Would you tell us a little bit about them?
Okay, yes. I sponsor Wilmer, who was 9 when we took him on, and he's now 19. He's from a family of 11 in the Philippines. And then I took on my mother's elderly lady, Maria, who lives in Medellin, or suburb of it. She's 78, and I've had her for about 9 years.
Please tell us more about Wilmer.
Wilmer's now 19. He was 9 when we started to sponsor him. He's really great at writing letters. Part of this program includes they have to write you a letter at least twice a year. But he writes me about 5 or 6 letters a year. His English is not his first language. He's has 2 other languages, Filipino and something else. But they start taking classes in English when they're about 3rd grade. So when you get his letters, they've improved over the years. They're kind of disjoint a little bit, and they don't have a chance to practice speaking their English. But when I went to visit him, he did speak English enough that we could communicate. He's now in his 2nd semester of college. It's within walking distance of his home, and he's taking computer science. But it's a lot different there because he was all delighted because he was learning to use the keyboard. That's at 19, and my granddaughter, who's 10, has been doing PowerPoint for Word for quite a while. But the goal of CFCA is education, so they can bring themselves out of poverty. So some of the times the families, when they finally have a child educated, a lot of times they have to leave the country in order to get a decent job. They send money back home. But that's the goal, is to get education so they can improve their lives. And the whole goal for CFCA is not to give them a handout, but to teach them to manage their own lives and to be educated or learn a trade so that they can help themselves.
Pat, you mentioned earlier that Wilmer was one of 11 children, I believe. So what happens when you help Wilmer financially? What happens to the other siblings?
Well, actually it's a family. It was a family of 11. There's 8 children, the mother, father, and grandfather. The grandfather died this year. There were 2 children sponsored. I think that's kind of the maximum. CFCA assesses the family situation and then provides help as needed. In Wilmer's case, what I learned when I went on my trip to the Philippines is it costs about $400 a month to support a family of 4. Well, this is a much larger family. At the time we started sponsoring Wilmer, his dad worked seasonal work for a friend in agriculture, and the income was about $80 a month, and that was sporadic. Now his father works for near the airport. I guess they live near the airport. And then he also is squatting on a piece of land which he has made into a garden and is producing enough vegetables on his own that he's getting an income of about $29 a week from the vegetables. So it's helped improve. Plus, 2 of the older children are working, so they can help. So only one person in that family could be sponsored, and that's Wilmer. And but they still have expenses for their other children's education, uniforms. They also have expenses for Wilmer, who was sick for an entire year due to diet and had to take supplemental potassium, which is like $55 a month for that. And then they had a hospital bill, and I helped with that. But that's not very much income, even in that country, to live on.